Hey, remember when Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch was going to be a big deal in the MCU? Marvel Studios was really tapping the Sherlock star to really have a big significant role. Well, it didn't really work out so great with Doctor Strange, Mom, right? The Multiverse of Madness kind of was okay. It wasn't a huge disaster financially for them compared to the stuff that's happened over the last couple of years, but it definitely didn't do well compared to the previous projects. And we get a little bit more because director Scott Derrickson had left the project as, quote, creative differences. And we knew he wanted Nightmare as the villain, as you can see here in this thumbnail. Now we get some inside scoop from C. Robert Cargill who, on his Black Phone 2 sort of press out there. This is coming from the direct. He was on with them discussing this project. And it was interesting saying how, Scott Derrickson and he were working together. They wanted Nightmare to be the villain of the first movie. They didn't really want to do that. They said, well, it's more of a second movie character. So, quote, here's from the direct. The question was, you guys worked on Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness before it kind of changed. You guys had talked about how Nightmare was on the plate to be the villain. Can you reveal maybe some of what you guys wanted to explore and do with Nightmare just ended up not happening? Cargill says, yeah, I mean, specifically wanted to have Nightmare be a villain in the first movie. Marvel Studios loved the idea, but they were like, yeah, it's more of a second movie character. Now, I totally get that. The first movie actually kind of played out well, giving you the origin story, setting up a decent villain. And I really wish they'd kind of tapped into Nightmare because it would have expanded the universe to allow for some of the other crazy characters. Instead, they were going to go deep down the rabbit hole with the multiverse stuff, making Doctor Strange part of that for sure. And obviously, we know how things have played out since then.
Not a great plan.
So it kind of chronicles a story that kind of leads up. And again, now Cargill was not really part of things once Multiverse of Madness kind of took place. This is sort of like this setup to that. He says, quote, well, we really wanted to do, me and Scott, like played around with the alternate realities, dream logic, things like that. We're big fans of that kind of psychonaut kind of space, going deep in your own dreams and the like. So we wrote some stuff for the first film that we want to try to incorporate in the second film of just the dream world, Doctor Strange having to battle with this guy who's a master of dreams and the reality in his whims. And so we're playing around with that kind of stuff. And they have to admit that he had not been brought on yet. He'd love to go back and work on that Nightmare script. He says, quote, I was not involved in Multiverse of Madness. I hadn't been brought on before Scott decided to part ways. And yeah, Nightmare is such a great character. I hope they get around to play with him someday. I'd love to go back and write Nightmare script. And see, the irony is, he really could have just been a piece of things to set up a third movie instead of being down this sort of like fake multiverse stuff. But they were trying to shoehorn everything in on this Sam Raimi project. And that's why this Multiverse of Madness to me doesn't hold up well because it's sort of a hodgepodge of two or three ideas. Like it feels very Sam Raimi when it's sort of like horror and creepy. There's a scene where it's crawling out of the thing in the temple. It feels very Evil Dead. There's moments like that I think work really well. But let's face it, the movie is more about Scarlet Witch and her descent into her obsession with these faux kids and how she's going to hijack a system to basically get these kids in the Darkhold, which, again, none of this stuff really kind of goes anywhere. Notice that this has been many, many years now. We don't have anything else. Quote, Agatha is the only thing that anyone kind of like got out of all that mess. And Agatha is like the least interesting of all of this kind of stuff, right? So now you look back on Nightmare and how it could have just been part of what he was experimenting with. Maybe he opens this realm, kind of giving Nightmare more ability to come into this world, whatever. Meanwhile, also having some of the multiverse stuff. But again, shoehorn in Scarlet Witch stuff, shoehorn America Chavez. Notice that she hasn't popped back. Has there even been conversation of America Chavez? Do we talk about Young Avengers, Doomsday, all the different projects that could possibly manifest? Has America Chavez ever brought up? I keep forgetting myself to include her in my conversations of all of the red herrings and untold things that are kind of out there. We're finally getting around to acknowledging in the latest Cat movie how this giant Eternals thing is out there in celestial beings. Like now it's high to vibranium, which is all just absurd nonsense. They just try to figure out some sort of loose, but no one deals with the Moon Knight issue. No one deals with some of these things that have happened, and America Chavez is one of them. And poor Doctor Strange, poor Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm not sure he really will get another movie. I think that Cargill goes on. He says, I really can't answer anything. He doesn't really know anything. He's sort of out of the loop. I would doubt very much that he's going to be brought in. They love the Rick and Morty crowd. Michael Waldron, of course, was brought in. And he basically said it was just not what they were looking for. They were looking for multiverse type stuff. Will Nightmare recommend? I don't know. I don't feel like it's on the radar screen, even though he is one of the more interesting and sort of formidable parts of the Stephen Strange. So I just don't think they want to lean into that. I think they really want to lean into Clea and setting up the change there to have her kind of take more of the lead going forward, and maybe they could do stuff with her tapping into Nightmare and bringing that into. I don't know. I just find it interesting how we do always have confirmation of their bad ideas or drifting away what were good ideas. Because I basically lost Scott Derrickson from most. He wanted it in the first movie, couldn't get it. Just kind of hinted, or I don't want to say promised, but kind of hinted, hey, we could have it for the second movie. They clearly wanted to go in a completely different direction. He's like, look, I'm out. Creative differences in this case kind of makes some sense. I mean, it's pretty rare that I can actually say that. I usually are like, oh, that's usually code word for Feige's being a jerk, or hey, by the way, this is what they're going to do. The bait and switch, the gender stuff, the race, well, whatever that kind of stuff has been sort of code word under that creative differences umbrella. But in this case, it does sound like, I don't know, they just literally, and there's no way Scott Derrickson's going back. There's no way that you're going to see them kind of be brought into this. So unless we see a massive title change of the direction, I'm not even sure I totally get what Benedict Cumberbatch's role is in the MCU anymore. So anyway, your thoughts on it? How do you feel? I can't remember the last time I watched the Doctor Strange movie because we don't really watch the Marvel stuff right now. I don't even have a desire to sit through Multiverse of Madness. It angers me with the whole. Remember the dumb universe? I call it the short bus universe, where they go to this place where Reed Richards is supposed to be the smartest one in the universe, but he acts like such an idiot and moron that allows Scarlet Witch to kind of trick Black Bolt into speaking, sewing up his mouth. He blows his head off. It's the statue falls on a Captain Marvel. There's so many stupid elements in the short bus universe. I just can't get through it all. And then of course it's more about Scarlet Witch, and you have these little zombie elements, and it sets up Clea. It's like he's not starring his own movie. So the second one I don't really want to sit through again. But the first one I've always enjoyed and just haven't watched in I don't know how long. And I don't know when. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? And basically, where is Benedict Cumberbatch on the grand scheme of things? Where is even he? I know we talked about America Chavez, but where is he in the grand scheme? We hear all these different names flying around and sure have redirected everything towards Robert Downey Jr. and Doomsday and Fantastic Four. Remember Doctor Strange? Do you remember he's still kind of there? Was supposed to be a big deal. Is kind of a big deal. Yeah, we don't talk about that. So anyway, love your thoughts. Talk to you soon.